All right. Hi, Katharine. It's Tom Beattie, and we're back. And we were entering the room laughing because I
I was
managed to
making
swap
fun
our
of you.
positions so that we were by our logos. But she says, now you look like you're in the driver's seat. Hey,
So, yeah, we can't
so
have
take it
that.
that way. Very
No,
funny. Well, you've got an exciting topic for us today. Take it away.
yeah, I've promised that we would talk about bylaw enforcement a few times now. I've teased that. Um, Weirdly, I haven't been that excited to dig into it, and maybe it's because as a portfolio manager for a number of years, there's some latent trauma
Well,
from
there's a lot of stress that exists around bylaws and rules. What's the difference?
Difference is mainly what you can enforce and how. So bylaws, that's pretty much anything. That's the laws that you're building. You can even govern how people are behaving inside their strata lots. But rules, that is just governing behavior on common property. So things like amenities, booking, parking rules, things like that. And the enforcement level is different. You can charge more money for bylaw fines than you can rules. So little things
Okay.
like that.
So
Yeah.
lots of little things like that, but it all comes down to trying to ensure that your community acts and behaves in a way that is consistent with what the majority of owners are dictating, and they can change their bylaws and rules, right?
Just as we see happening all over the world throughout history, though, right? Because we've
Exactly.
had rules that organize us in shared living for thousands of years, right?
Yes.
For an article that I wrote, I was looking into like ancient Babylon and the fact that there were written laws back then too on how to live together. Because whenever you put people together in dense space, we start fighting. We don't play nice. Like
Even
we
when we've got
all,
some room, we tend
yeah,
to find
we
something
we
to.
want to spread out, elbows up, right? So, and that's not really conducive to the person who's standing beside you. So
Yeah,
problems arise. Um, and
interesting.
in shared living, you're not getting people coming together for any particular reason. People are not coming together because necessarily nowadays in Vancouver, in particular, in BC, it's not you all really like the same cuisine and the same music and the same movies, and you're all going to do the same things and the same behavior, and no one will grate on each other whatsoever. That's
No, absolutely not. I mean, neighborhoods all have their unique flavor and they attract their own demographics, but you're going to find within any one of them a huge variety of all
I
those
don't want to live
things, of
in the
ages, ethnicities,
Stepford.
cultures, and foods.
Yeah, well, who wants to live in the Stepford Wives world? I don't. That sounds
I
terrible.
don't even know who they are, but I probably don't want to live
You
there.
haven't seen that movie with Nicole Kidman? Oh, it's pretty funny. It's like a biting social commentary kind of satire movie. Yeah, it's really funny.
I'm uncultured. I like shallow movies.
Yeah, I wanted to, I think, dig in. I wanted to explain the process of bylaw enforcement. If we have that, I see today I
Be
can
happy
actually
to
say, if you don't
oblige.
mind, just let's put that up on the screen.
Let's put up our
Um,
slide.
yeah, I wanted to walk through section 135 a little bit and clear up any misconceptions about this journey, because when you look at the 100,000 foot view of bylaw enforcement in the CRT, you see really common trends emerge as to um, the decisions coming down. And the number one thing I would say that goes wrong is that the process wasn't followed correctly. Like
Right,
it
right.
could be
We've
the
had this
most
chat with some
guilty.
lawyers. I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
recommended, and we chatted with Phil Dugan of Citadel, and he was talking through some of those issues on enforcement and how important it is to follow that process. And for those that aren't following along here, Section 135 is of the Strata
Oh,
Property
Strata
Act.
Property Act. Yes. Yeah.
Yes,
PSPA.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so we're talking from a British Columbia context, but
Yes.
across condo world, we have very similar rules and processes when it comes to trying to enforce your bylaws or your rules or your CCNRs, depending on where you are.
Yeah. And it might be a slightly different path depending on what the legislation is that you fall under in your jurisdiction. But ultimately, the idea of due process, transparency, communication, these are things that we come to expect in our democratic society. And I don't want to live in a building that doesn't observe due process, if only because, like, what if they're wrong? Um, when we were doing our StrataGal Live scenarios, putting members of the public, all different buildings, backgrounds into these scenarios, and they're completely made up. This stories only exist in my head. This is not a real building, and they will be led right down the biases that they get through their personal information. So I already know that it's really natural for people to come to incorrect assumptions given the partial information they receive. So I want due process as a person knowing this, because otherwise I could be guilty, but I want to be afforded due process, or I don't want to be in that community. That's horrible, right?
Fair. I think everybody does. When we're looking at this step-by-step chart, where did this come from?
I just made this.
Okay, so you made this, and
yes.
This is to walk
this
somebody
does
through
not
the
constitute
process.
legal or professional advice. Disclaimer. This is just generalized guidance to help you through understand it in normal people speak, basically.
Okay. So first of all, you got to have some bylaws. Everybody's got some under the Strata Property Act. There's default ones. Any community can change it at any time. They do this through a vote at an AGM or an SGM.
Yep, 3/4 vote.
It is officially filed and
filed at land titles.
Yep. Official. Okay.
Yes.
So all of those are in place, and you get to step one.
Yeah. So your neighbor has a huge party on a Friday night. Okay. Because if you look through the CRT, noise complaints are like one of the number one things that people complain about. Noise, pets, parking, basically. So your neighbor has a party on Friday night, and you're like really mad. So you're like, Strata, I want Strata to do something about this. Well, the first thing they need is they actually need to receive a complaint that the bylaws are being breached, because obviously within your budget as a Strata corporation, you don't have a line for police enforcement. So you don't have like police roaming the halls to check for bylaw infractions, obviously. So someone has to report it, preferably in writing, have to have all the particulars, right? So the step one where people go wrong is they don't say what happened. They will literally send, and I've seen hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of bylaw complaint emails through the course of my career. They don't always identify who the sender is to start with, who the complaint is about, which bylaw is being breached, what day it is, what time it is, the address, all those things. So like, who are you? Where are you from? What's happened? What time is it? What day is it? What's the nature of the problem? And make it specific to the behavior, not the person, right? This is not about getting down on your neighbors as humans. It's about mitigating behavior that is not conducive to good community in a shared building. That's supposed to be the goal, right?
Right. So It starts with a complaint. Anybody can make a complaint. Who is it? An owner, a tenant, a Strata council member?
Strata council member, sure. Yeah.
A caretaker?
Honestly, yes, that happens in practice a lot, but I actually discourage it, to be honest. Like, if it's that it can be reported to the caretaker by residents, then that's an owner complaint, not a caretaker complaint. But I would actually actively discourage Strata corporations from using their caretaker as a police officer. It's not going to be conducive to creating a really trusting relationship. You have that caretaker going into people's units potentially for access, things like that. And you don't want to create like a feeling of distrust between the caretaker and the residents. So like, keep them out of the bylaw enforcement, to be honest. But yes, like tenants, owners, council members, if they're submitting a complaint, they're an owner though, right?
So a concierge though could report a parking bylaw violation, could they not?
Sure. So what I would technically no, but I would say what they could do is the council can send a standing directive to the concierge saying you are directed to call the tow company for these things or follow this process as our direction and our decision. Or they could say, like, you can report to us and we'll send the letters through the brokerage.
And we've seen this on TV. You don't want a militant member of your condo building, whether it be another resident or the concierge, out there trying to ticket and do everything to everyone. That's not a good environment. That's not the point of all of this.
It's not a really super safe work site that you're creating for that employee or worker either, that contractor. To be honest, you're putting
I
them
want to
in a
go
really
one
high
more
conflict
direction
position.
before we move on to step 2. And that is to say that, let's just say that this neighbor that's having a party on Friday night is a bully. And you're kind of scared of them. If you email that complaint can be viewed or requested by the one that was
It's
having the
asking
party.
for a friend, right?
So you can, if you are intimidated by someone, but you would like to report a bylaw violation, you
Yes.
may do that by phone. And
Okay,
having
so
that not be written, according to Phil Dugan, was a way for them to Strata to say, honestly and truthfully, that it was a verbal report and that there is no record in writing to send to them. And I just want to put that out there because I know that there are bullies and I know that it can be intimidating to bring this sort of thing up if you live in their midst.
it is so true. I'm going to say 2 things though. I will say number 1, get it then to be transcribed from that council member then. So the council submits it via an email. Council received a verbal complaint that wishes to stay anonymous. Here are the particulars. We took this report in person and can validate that this was a resident or an owner submitting it and da da da. Because otherwise, how do you prove it later? Like, if this bully is really bad and the council like actually wants to try to get rid of them somehow in the future, you don't have any weapon, meaning documentation, if you didn't do it through those channels. So yes, do it verbally, but like if you're at the part where you're like worried about recourse, you should probably reach out to other channels, like seeking out a lawyer or law enforcement.
Yeah.
That's because, like,
there's a
as we're
range
gonna go
to
through
it.
these 6 steps, this is not fast. Like, and people sometimes are like, I want Strata does nothing about the bylaws. I'm like, Strata's volunteers, and there's like a minimum 21-day process to follow before you can even put a fine on this person. So, like, I don't know what you expected in terms of efficiency of law enforcement in changing behavior through the strata of volunteers. But like,
Please take us to step 2 then. So we're
so
past the
step
point
2,
of receiving that complaint.
so you got your complaint. Stratus has to send a letter to the alleged offender giving them the details, right? So you have to be told what you've done wrong. It has to note the section of the bylaw that you're actually violating. It has to quote section 135 of the Strata Property Act. So it kind of tells you it has to tell you what your rights are, basically, right? And then it has to advise them that they have a reasonable opportunity to respond. And like, they like words like that in the Strata Property Act, like a reasonable amount of time. And so by best practices at most brokerages I've been in, that's a 20-day period. So it's 2 weeks plus the interpretations of the other sections of the Act and the Interpretation Act. Usually in practice, that means 20 days. So already right there, this is a multi-week process just for one noise complaint that happened a while ago. During that time, the tenant, the owner, can submit a response. Maybe it wasn't them. They're like, what are you talking about? I have airfare tickets and a notarized witness statement saying I was out of the country. And, like, I have inside my unit cams showing it's empty. So, get bent, counsel, it wasn't me. Like, that's why you need to have due processes so that people could prove you wrong. And maybe there was another source.
Do people just write in and say, it was me, I'm really sorry?
Landlords sometimes say it before they've even talked to their tenants, which is really funny because the tenant gets mad and tries to dispute it later. Very few times do people take accountability, apologize, and try to go about their way. And I think it says two things. We've come into a society now or a place where we just don't want to take accountability, but two, we're not creating a safe space for accountability to be held on the part of the residents. If you know it doesn't matter if you say sorry or not, that everyone is so vicious and so ready to get each other that you're going to get a $200 fine no matter what, then forget it. You're never going to admit it, right? But if it's known that, hey, we take accountability here, we're a good neighborhood, we know that that was just so-and-so's 30th birthday or 50th birthday and they had friends over, and, you know, we actually invited all the neighbors and gave them gift certificates to thank them. And Bob down the hall, he's just a jerk. Like, he's the only one in the building that didn't come to the party, and he's the one who complained, you know? So
what do you do? Because there was a contravention of the bylaw, and yet they were sorry and everyone else was. What is the council or their manager supposed to do in that situation?
Well, what kind of world do you want to live in where people can't even have a party for their decade? You know, like, there's reasonable expectations and reasonable quiet enjoyment, but you're not entitled to perfection or library quiet 24/7. Like, there are exceptions that are made purely by the fact of the matter that you're living in close quarters with, you know, dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of other people. So
I get that, but also, like, the bylaw was contravened and the board has received the complaint and they received the response.
Yes. So then after that point, number 4, step 4, after reviewing, the council can decide what action to take. So they could, in this case, let's say they're like, you know what, we have considered all of the things, and they went out of their way to make sure that there was due consideration of all of their neighbors above and beyond. We have decided that, yes, the bylaws were contravened, and as a specific to these circumstances, we're making an exception. But I would like very specifically base it on the circumstances.
Right. You're pointing out mitigating circumstances here. You're not just saying
there has to be a why.
Don't apply,
and it better be strong too. You know?
Yeah.
Or it could be like, you know what, fair enough, but, you know, secretly everyone chips in a pot and pays back the owner the $200 to pay for their fine. Who knows? Maybe we'll just, like, you know, appease Bob.
Yeah, but you can't indiscriminately exempt someone from fines and target others. That is definitely not allowed. And so you must have either considered this.
It has to be the same circumstances, though. Then it has to be in the comparable circumstances. So if Bob had, you know, as retaliation, he saw in the minutes that they waived the fine. So on the next Friday night, he cranked up his jukebox up to, you know, level whatever, 99, and played polka music all night just to get back at everyone. Well, that's interesting. That would be a fun one for that council to go through. And I don't even know, as a strata manager in this fake scenario, how I would guide them. I might be like, damn, you guys might just have to bite the bullet on this one. And you might have to just go make good with him.
Right.
That's hard.
So he may or may not have enough mitigating circumstances, but you're making judgment calls. This is tough.
Yeah, it is. And you can see why council spends so much time on them, which is, again, so the second part of that decision is document the decision in the meeting minutes. And I don't want to ignore that point because it's such a crucial point. If it wasn't in the meeting minutes, you can't prove that you made that decision by a majority at a meeting. So that's why that's really important. It's because the minutes are the proof of the process.
So wait a minute. It's been 20 days that they had the right to respond, but your next council meeting isn't for another 3 weeks. What do you do? Do you wait, or do you do one of these email meetings? What do you do?
No, I don't like to do email meetings. If there's really going to be a long period between council meetings, like they only meet every quarter, I would have some sort of system where I track the infractions and send a list to the council, or the council tracks them, and then they can just hold a meeting with each other quickly to make a decision about those infractions, send them to the manager to get those decision letters out. But generally, the CRT and the courts also give some grace to the fact that these are unpaid volunteers who are giving their time to help their buildings. So they generally have given a grace period between 3 and 4 months in a lot of instances, but anything more than that, they've kind of consistently, the CRT said, anything more than that, though, is now unreasonable. But the sooner you do it is the better, obviously. So
good. Okay, so they've made their majority decision as a strata council. The property manager does not make this decision.
No, absolutely not.
All right, take us to step 5.
Step 5, the step that is usually missed, and one of the cruxes for most strat councils is this step is where they go wrong. You have to notify the owner and or the tenant. If it was the tenant that was the offender, you have to notify them in writing of that decision. So there's 2 letters for a Section 135 process. There's the warning that we heard you may have done something super bad, like, can you stop that? Here's the process, read you your Miranda rights, and then, okay, so we met and it turns out, yeah, you do kind of suck, and here, $200. So there has to be those 2 steps, but being in the minutes is not enough, a notification.
Right.
And then after that point, after the decision letter is sent, then you can go apply the fines, chargebacks, whatever it is, go do that stuff. And that's also a step that gets mucked up. Is I've seen a lot of places where step 6 is actually done with step 2. And it's tough because it requires some tracking on the part of the council or the strata manager or the brokerage, and it can be tricky, and not all of the different versions of brokerage tech that I've seen have worked well with bylaw processes. But yeah, so stick to the process, or honestly, if you skip any step or you go out of order in terms of where you've applied your fines, you're done.
Strata Press has built something really great for this, because it allows an owner to make the submission. It allows the Strata Council to send the notice and select the passage from the bylaws or the rules. It tracks the timing. It allows them to make all of these. It's really great that they're using technology to ensure that none of the steps are skipped, that due time and due process is followed. I love that.
Well, and because I understand too, Strata West has been working with them since they were just a little baby company, and so I know that there's a lot of very pragmatic and really good high production managers in that brokerage. So I like to think probably that they've absorbed some good ideas to integrate into Strata Press through that avenue, and that's kind of exciting to hear about this, because it's hit or miss sometimes. Whether or not due process is followed consistently across the strata just depends on one person, either the strata manager or secretary, being organized. And that sucks. It's hard.
And they're super busy. You've got so many issues in so many communities. I have a lot of appreciation for that. So you skip any step, you've got an unenforceable fine or chargeback. You're mentioning chargeback, and that's a bit different. How does that come into play?
Not really. A chargeback is just a remedy to breaking the bylaws. And the bylaw is that you're not supposed to go around and damage common property or other stuff,
Right. So you've had a plumbing leak in your unit. It was your fridge line. You led to damaging other properties. Ultimately,
so now the remedy to breaching Section 3 is that you have to pay for the damage. So you have to follow that process. Now there are chargeback bylaws, and there's lots of amazing legal firms that can draft them for you.
Yeah.
I would never try to enforce a process with the council if it hasn't been legally written, first of all, and second of all, it's a beast of a bylaw. It's usually about 1.5 pages long. And it interplays with other parts of that building's bylaws. So you can't just copy paste from another building, because some part of that might actually be negated by some other wording in your own bylaws. So don't mess around where it comes to chargeback bylaws. But honestly, I still advocate to people that they go through Section 135, because you think about more so, is it really well documented? Could you actually prove responsibility? And if not, then you have to follow Section 135. Could the person sell the unit before you get the invoices if it was a major water loss and it's below the deductible of 100,000, but it's like 80,000? So those invoices are going to come in like 10 months later. Meanwhile, Bob, he's like, forget this, I'm out, I sold. And this person who buys doesn't know that they might be on the hook. And sure, you could say they still could claim it, but good luck once they're not in the building anymore. Good luck getting anything out of them. Have fun with that.
So what's the new buyer supposed to do? Did they get notice of this as
Get a
they're in the
lawyer.
process on a Form D, or
Okay,
where?
so that's the thing. If you followed section 135 though, a strata letter is issued as notifying the owner of that unit, here's what's happened on this date, there was a water leak from your unit, you've damaged other stuff. When the invoices become available, part of the remedy might be that they're charged back to you, council make a
Right.
decision. So now that's a record correspondence on title for that unit. And if the seller is lying to the buyer and not disclosing that, well, now that's going to be an interesting fight between the buyer and seller. The strata's not going to get involved, but at least the strata protects itself then, right?
Exactly.
So it's slow, it's not great, but I prefer section 135 over the chargeback bylaw always. So
Very
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a complicated topic. Ultimately, the goal of your bylaws and rules is not to fine everybody that lives in your community. It is to try and have some harmony and some cohesion around what is the right behavior. If living in a traditional neighborhood has unspoken rules on good conduct, because you're in such close quarters condos, just take it that next level and put it all down.
But it's something we see throughout every society in history. Like natural, organic people getting along only works when shame works. And you can only have effective shame when everybody knows each other. And so if nobody knows each other, no one cares if they treat each other badly. So you need to have written policies to govern yourselves more effectively. And it just naturally will happen because if you don't know people, you're insulated from them. You care less if you piss them off. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, every neighborhood I've lived in, there has been some inter-neighbor conflict over something. In my neighborhood, it's been trees. You know, the guy that did or did not top or chop their trees, huge subject of contention. And of course, you've got separate properties and their own rights, and yet there's also an element of being a good neighbor that some people choose not to play with.
we
So
had
yeah,
we
it's
had a
nice.
street parking pylon chair kind of neighborhood.
Right.
So
Different
I know,
issue,
like
but
people, pets,
same drama.
parking, trees, all the things. It's spread out
Yeah.
differently.
And lack of ability to enforce. You're down to city bylaws if you're
Yeah.
living in a typical arrangement, not in strata or condo. So on one sense, having the condo there helps to maintain a sense of order and reduce that tension between neighbors because a third party is enforcing.
I think too, sometimes when councils get too down in the weeds about what the bylaw enforcement process is or why it's in place, that is when it can get even worse. Like when you have things like when councils are like, oh my God, things are a mess here and so many bylaws, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, really, can you tell me like why? Because it's never just that everyone's behaving badly. There's always an inciting incident. There's always a story behind it, or maybe several stories. And sometimes trying to enforce all the fallout from that is literally a futile exercise that stops you from actually getting any work done. And you should maybe just like address it. But we're very ego protecting little beings as humans, unfortunately. And we don't like to sometimes get at the root cause. So that's fun.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
I
So
think in those circumstances where someone is apologetic and does express some humility for what they may or may not have intentionally done, can lead to a better outcome. And trying to talk to your neighbor, if it's not an inflammatory type discussion. I think it was Jacqueline Jeffrey talked about watering her plants on her balcony, and she had too many, and she put too much water, and
she just didn't know.
she just didn't know, right? And so going downstairs and talking to the neighbor and saying, "I'm really sorry, I didn't even think about this. I totally understand. I won't do that again." Can just get rid of that tension because you
100%.
didn't want it in the first place.
In my rental days, when I had a couple of buildings with landlord clients, I used to ask them to give me some money every year, just a modest amount in the budget, to hold a holiday party for the tenants in the buildings. And it was just that act, that ritual, that bringing everyone together. It allowed them to see each other as humans once a year at least, and to see me as a human who cares about them. Now, I didn't have to do that. Like, it was me lugging around box wine and sandwich trays to, make the use of the budget that I could get from the landlords. But I never had a landlord that actually said no to $500 to put that together. And it went so far in goodwill and like people seeing each other who never see each other.
I don't talk much about rentals, but that's a fantastic idea for all those landlords. This is a pretty small investment to try and buy a little piece if you've got a renter who cares enough to go to the effort to do it. So
yeah, you can go to Save On, get some sandwich trays, get some box wine, some cookies, do it in the lobby, have some Christmas music and whatever, some party hats. People want to get together and know their neighbors. And then again, when we see each other, we can ask those questions. Like I have councils and trainees, like training Strata licensees that ask me questions. Like, oh, I have this issue with this council and they're dealing with this thing with this owner, like and they want an answer from me. And then I'll always like do that smile, and I'm just like, they're just like, ugh, like, you're not gonna give me an answer, are you? You're gonna ask me questions. You? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm gonna ask you questions.
So Katharine.
I know. It's annoying. I get it. The best part is those licensees later on say that in their careers they'll go forward and they'll think more like that, and they'll ask questions like that, and they'll diffuse tension within their councils more effectively like that. So I'm just saying there's something there. So yeah.
We're coming up to the holiday time of year, Katharine. What do you have planned?
Christmas kind of snuck up on me this year, I got to be honest, because I'm so excited about all the projects that I'm doing. If I didn't have a 6-year-old son, I would have forgotten Christmas this year, maybe. I am a really broke version of Scrooge, basically. Just like, what? You're gonna make me stop doing my work? So, no, nothing exciting. See some family and stuff like that. But
yeah,
I'm like honestly excited about what I'm building right now. So.
I'm excited.
What are you gonna do?
Some good stuff. Yeah, family, lots of that stuff. Got my last scheduled webinar for this year coming up this week, and then I'll be putting out a condo "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" special for next week. So that'll be a lot of fun.
All right.
Yeah. So with that, why don't we call this one a year? And you can come back with all the exciting stuff.
I could talk some. I didn't even get any good. I was going to tell one of the best bylaw stories that I had is not even my own.
You got one.
It's one of
Do
my
it.
dad's.
All right. Go.
And it was, he had this resident that complained over and over noise disturbance and nuisance disturbance, saying that the woman in the unit above was flying out on a broom like a witch at night, and it was keeping her up. Now, obviously, we don't laugh about mental health. There's obviously some mental health issues, but I loved the idea of thinking that maybe actually she was a witch, and she's like, damn.
They're on to me.
Yeah. So I don't know. I've heard some good ones, but that's still my favorite one.
I like that. I have not heard a witch story before. I've heard other.
Well, that was the weirdest PG-13 bylaw story.
Oh, right. Yeah. We're not going to the other one.
We won't go. No.
We're not rated for that, but there is a lot of interesting things that happens, and from bullies to hoarders to all sorts of things. The world out there is interesting. So for those who don't have it, we'll paste this image under the notes so that you've got a little step-by-step reference guide to pursuing bylaw fines and chargebacks. With that, Katharine, thank you so much. We'll do this again in January.